What if the update everyone begged for finally arrived, only to reveal problems the community didn't expect? That's exactly what's happening with Battlefield 6 right now. After weeks of non-stop commentary, frustrated posts, and endless breakdowns of broken gunplay, weird spread bugs, and movement penalties that felt like punishment, DICE finally pushed out a patch that was supposed to smooth everything out. And at first glance, it worked. Weapons suddenly hit the way they were always meant to. Movement felt smoother. ADS transitions felt cleaner. You could jump, land, and actually aim without your sight bouncing across the screen like it was possessed. For a moment, the entire player base breathed a sigh of relief. But then people started playing more, testing more, pushing the limits, and that's when the update stopped feeling like an improvement and started feeling like a reveal. Because instead of fixing the game quietly, this update exposed exactly which parts of BF6 are solid and which parts might be in serious trouble. The guns, amazing. The movement, better than ever. But the deeper systems, the foundation beneath everything, that's where the cracks start showing, and they're impossible to ignore now that the rest of the game is finally catching up. So before we dive into the chaos, the netcode issues, the audio disaster, the vehicle meltdown, we need to understand the changes that created this wave. Because the moment gunplay and movement feel good, everything else becomes way more noticeable. And the community is realizing that fast. Let's start with the first domino that fell, the rebirth of BF6 gunplay. The moment players loaded in after the update, the difference was immediate. Gunfights went from unpredictable coin flips to actual skill-based engagements. Bullets stopped drifting off into the atmosphere. Recoil patterns suddenly made sense. You could burst fire and actually see consistent results instead of watching your crosshair magically push bullets away from the target. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't minor, it was a complete shift in the entire feel of the game. The surprising part is that the update didn't add anything dramatic. It removed bugs that were sabotaging weapons from the inside. Two major issues were quietly ruining gunfights without most players realizing why. If you sprinted and then immediately tried to ADS and shoot, the game treated you like you were still sprinting at full speed. Maximum spread, maximum inaccuracy. Your bullets basically painted a circle around your enemy instead of hitting them. Even when standing still or crouching, the game sometimes wrongly calculated your movement speed as max, giving you the same awful spread you'd get while full-speed strafing. In other words, the game thought you were sprinting, even when you weren't, and your weapon punished you for movement you didn't actually perform. Once these bugs were removed, everything changed overnight. Weapons that used to feel inconsistent suddenly felt reliable. Guns that were borderline unusable because of spread are now top tier. And weapons that were already solid feel almost laser accurate. Let's look at some of the biggest winners. The AK-4D, a mid-range predator. This gun went from situational to delete people at 8100M with confidence. It rewards proper bursting better than almost anything now. Pre-patch, hitting moving targets at long range felt like praying to RNGasis. Now it feels like using an actual firearm. The M277, the new S-tier laser. Before the update, it wasn't bad, it was just lost in the middle. Now it's one of the strongest all-around guns in the game. The burst accuracy is insane, the recoil recovery feels snappy, and it's shredding players before they realize what hit them. The DRS, somehow even more accurate. This gun was already borderline unfair in skilled hands, and now it's even better. Probably the most accurate full auto in BF6 right now. The kind of weapon that makes you question whether the other guy is cheating or just using this monster. The NVO, a silent winner. No one expected this gun to glow up, but the tightened spread and smoother feel after the update makes it a sleeper S-tier pick that people are slowly discovering. And the wider impact? Players can actually trust their weapons for the first time since launch. But gunplay wasn't the only thing that shifted. Because the movement system, something the community argued about non-stop, got hit with subtle changes that completely shift how BF6 flows. And this is where the skill gap truly comes alive. Movement is one of the most sensitive topics in Battlefield. Players don't want it to feel like COD, but they also don't want it to feel stiff and sluggish. BF6 launched with what felt like overly harsh movement penalties, especially around ADS. Before the update, the moment you jumped, landed, or slid, your sights would wobble so aggressively that trying to challenge anyone with movement felt like signing your own death certificate. But now, it's a whole different world. Jumping actually works now. Before the patch, jump peeking was a joke. You'd land, aim, and your weapon would bob as if the soldier's arms were made of gelatin. Now your sights stabilize faster, allowing actual shot correction. Landing penalties were softened. You still feel an ADS penalty, but it's no longer a full second of fighting your own character. You can contest enemies faster, making aggressive peeks viable again. Aerial ADS is less chaotic. You won't be hitting laser-accurate shots mid-air, but at least your sight picture no longer shakes like you're strapped to a blender. Slide transitions feel cleaner. Sliding into a gunfight used to feel like a lost cause. Now you can land shots during and after the slide with actual consistency. None of this makes movement broken. None of it makes the game too sweaty. But it does open the door for skilled players to outplay opponents in ways that simply weren't possible before. And that's where the controversy kicks in. Half the community says, "This is perfect. It raises the skill gap without ruining the identity of the game." The other half thinks DICE is slowly drifting toward the kind of cracked movement style you'd see in faster arena shooters. But no matter which side you're on, movement is undeniably better, more fluid, more responsive, more rewarding. And combined with the gunplay changes, it creates something BF6 hasn't had since launch, a meta that finally makes sense. But that meta is shifting fast, faster than people expected, and the winners and losers aren't who people thought they'd be. The moment the patch dropped, the meta scrambled like someone kicked a beehive. Guns that were ignored for weeks suddenly became dangerous. Weapons that relied on spread bugs lost their crutch. And entire loadouts that used to be borderline troll picks are now shredding lobbies. This update didn't just buff guns, it reshaped the battlefield. Let's walk through the biggest shockwaves. A low RPM, high damage, guns are back. Weapons like the AK-4D, M47, and even the M60 feel way more reliable because they no longer get punished by invisible spread penalties. Their damage per burst finally matters again. High RPM weapons lost a quiet advantage. Faster guns used to feel more forgiving because spread bugs artificially helped them compete. Now that spread is fixed, raw accuracy wins, and low RPM weapons hit harder. Some guns feel stealth buffed. This is the part the community is buzzing about. Certain weapons weren't listed in the patch notes, yet people swear they feel different, more accurate, more stable, more predictable. Are these real buffs? Placebo? Leftover effects of the spread fix? Nobody knows, and DICE hasn't said a word, which fuels speculation, and speculation = engagement. The DRS might be overpowered now. Some players believe the DRS is too consistent after the update. Full auto laser accuracy at almost any range with minimal recoil, it's becoming a problem, but a fun problem if you're the one using it. The KTS is still ridiculous. No matter what happens to the meta, this gun continues to behave like a cheat code. The update didn't change it much, but the new movement and spread fixes make it even easier to abuse. These changes reshape everything. How players engage at range, which guns dominate close quarters, what weapons are viable in competitive lobbies, whether aggressive or passive play is stronger. But here's the twist. Now that guns and movement feel better, the things that don't work are more obvious than ever. The cracks beneath the surface, they're clearer than they have ever been. And the first major crack, one that threatens the entire identity of Battlefield, is the vehicle system. And what you're about to hear might be the biggest problem the game has right now. Once the gunplay and movement started feeling better, players immediately noticed something else. Something that's been simmering under the surface since launch. Vehicles. And not in a small, needs a few tweaks kind of way. In a, this entire system might need to be rebuilt from scratch kind of way. The moment you step into anything with wheels, wings, or tracks, the game suddenly stops feeling like the polished shooter you just left. Tanks feel floaty. Helicopters fight the controls more than the enemy. Jets clip the environment in ways that don't even make sense. Even simple physics interactions like turning, sliding, drifting, or lifting off feel unpredictable. It's not one problem. It's not two problems. It's a full web of issues that touch everything from physics, to damage models, to balance, to handling curves. Players across the community are saying the same thing. Battlefield 6's vehicles are not on the level of classic Battlefield. Not even close. Veteran players compare BF6's vehicle system to Battlefield 4, and BF4 wins by a mile. Not because BF4's vehicles were perfect, but because they felt intentional. Designed, predictable. In BF6, you can lose a dogfight simply because your helicopter decides to nosedive out of nowhere. You can get obliterated by ground vehicles because turret rotation randomly desyncs. You can slam into a building because your aircraft stutters mid-turn. You can die with full armor because the damage model hiccuped. And the worst part? Vehicle versus. Vehicle combat feels completely unbalanced. This isn't a small issue. Vehicles are one of the core pillars of Battlefield's identity. If they are broken, the game feels broken. But as painful as the vehicle situation is, the next issue hits even harder because it affects every single moment of gameplay, even when you're on foot. If you've ever played Battlefield for more than 2 minutes, you've experienced the classic moment. You sprint behind cover. You're definitely safe. You're fully hidden. And then, you die anyway. You look at the kill cam. You watch your character peek back out in the open, and you think, there is no way that's what happened. Congratulations, you've met Battlefield netcode. And BF6, unfortunately, did not escape this curse. For decades, and yes, decades, Battlefield games have struggled with the same problem. The server and the client often disagree on where players actually are. You think you made it behind the wall, The server thinks you're still out in the open. Boom. Dead. It's not just latency, it's not just interpolation, it's not just movement validation, it's the entire networking model. And in BF6, the combination of fast movement, large player counts, and complex environments makes the issue even more noticeable. Players report dying half a second after taking cover, taking damage before enemies appear on the screen, bullets registering late, hit markers showing but no damage taken. Enemy positions snapping into place, getting desynced in close quarters fights. The update improved gunplay, which ironically made netcode feel worse. Why? Because when your gun actually works, you expect the server to keep up. Before the patch, you might miss shots because your spread sabotaged you. Now, when your shots land but don't register, you notice instantly. And the reality is harsh. BF6 netcode isn't the worst Battlefield has seen, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. People want DICE to raise tick rates. Others want better lag compensation. Some want a full overhaul similar to what Respawn did for Apex. Nobody knows what DICE will do, but the pressure is on. Because gunplay improvements only highlight the deeper cracks beneath them. And speaking of cracks, there's one issue so universally hated, so universally infuriating, that players consider it worse than dying behind walls. If netcode ruins fairness, bad audio ruins survival. And BF6 audio, unfortunately, is struggling. Players describe the soundscape as muffled, muddy, inconsistent, directionless, delayed, missing entirely. There is nothing more infuriating in a first-person shooter than dying to someone who was inches away and completely silent. But that's BF6 right now. People report no footsteps above or behind them, no enemy sprint sounds, footsteps that blend into ambient noise, audio cues triggering late sound, cutting out during explosions, footstep volume being inconsistent even in the same building. The wildest part? Battlefield 2042, a game many players disliked, had the best footsteps in franchise history. They were crisp, loud, directional, reliable, almost too good. So, going from 2042's god-tier audio to BF6's washed-out sound design feels like a shocking downgrade. And it impacts every moment of gameplay. You can't track flanks, you can't predict pushes, you can't read gunfights, you can't tell how many enemies are nearby, you can't tell where danger is coming from. It breaks the immersion, it breaks the tension, it breaks the skill gap. The community wants answers, and fast. But here's the twist. Despite all these issues, BF6 is still generating hope, something the franchise hasn't had in a long time, and that leads us to the bigger picture. Here's the shocking part of this entire story. People still love this game. For the first time in years, Battlefield feels alive. People are making content again. Players are grinding again. Streamers are excited again. Clans are returning. Communities are rebuilding. BF6 has something BF 2042 never had at launch, a foundation worth saving. The core gunplay is strong, the maps are better, the pacing is smoother, the time to kill feels rewarding, the movement feels skill-based again, the sandbox is deep. The issues, vehicles, netcode, audio, are big, but they're fixable issues, not game-ending issues. And for the first time in a long time, players believe DICE might actually fix them. Not instantly, not in a single patch, but over time, which is why this update matters more than people realize. It didn't just fix bugs, it exposed what needs to be fixed next. That's how a comeback begins. So here's where we stand. BF6 just got its biggest update yet. Gunplay is reborn, movement is stronger, the meta is shifting, players are excited again, but the update also revealed the truth. Beneath the improvements, Battlefield 6 is still fighting against deep-rooted issues. Vehicles need an overhaul, netcode needs modernization, audio needs a full rebuild, and the foundation needs strengthening before the game reaches its full potential. The real question now is simple. Will DICE commit to the fixes the community actually cares about? Or will BF6 become another almost great Battlefield? Only time will tell. But for the first time in years, players aren't walking away. They're watching, waiting, hoping. Because this game, for all its flaws, might just be the spark that brings Battlefield back. So now I want to hear from you. What's the biggest issue you've run into? Vehicles, netcode, audio, or something completely different? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear your take. And if you want more breakdowns, updates, and brutally honest Battlefield content, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around. Because trust me, this story is far from over.